I was competing at a high level, and I was working with a lot of executives and really driven people. And I was doing all like high performance coaching, mindset. It was all that stuff, right? Like protocols and disciplines and mindset. And what I noticed was that secretly, behind the scenes, when they weren't out in front of all their buddies or all the place or on the floor, throwing weights around or on whatever it was, they were craving relationships.
From a professional soccer career to becoming a driving force in the mortgage industry, Brian Covey has shown what it takes to find your competitive edge. Get off the sidelines and get in the game. Find your competitive edge with Brian Covey.
Welcome back to another edition of Finding Your Competitive Edge. So today I am super excited about this because not only do we get to talk about faith-based entrepreneurs, we get to talk about what has been changing in the world for many of you that listen to our show that are running businesses. And the truth be told, you don't feel fulfilled. You feel like you've hit this roadblock or an obstacle in your life. You're not sure how you get through that. Our guest today is a friend of mine. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. I'd met her husband, Mark. Christine Jewell is not only a speaker, she's got her own podcast, and it's called Breaking Chains. We're going to talk about her new book that she has launched on Drop the Armor. And I'm going to tell you guys, you tune in and you listen and you're curious about where you are and why you may be having some of those feelings and you're successful in one area or multiple areas of your life, but maybe you haven't broken through and found that true fulfillment yet. Like you see other great entrepreneurs that have somehow figured out the code. We're going to break all that down for you today and help you on how you can drop your armor, move forward, and actually live the life that I believe God has called you to live today. So let's buckle up. We're going to get into it. Christine, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Brian. I'm so glad we made it happen. So glad to be here.
You know what? And that is a great segue because when you and Mark were here and we got to meet up at the golf sanctuary and we're talking and I'm seeing all the things that both of you are doing. I've seen how you've changed, you've evolved. Your book was not even out yet at that time. And I'm thinking, okay, you're writing this book. What's it about? And you started to share it. I would love to start there because this was really fascinating to me as you wrote this book. And I'm thinking of myself and my journey and the entrepreneurs and the people that you're going to help. I read this chapter. I hope it's okay if I open up with this. And it was Warrior Letter number 1. I highlighted this because this stuck out to me. And for those of you that's kind of curious what this is all about, it's about, Dear Warrior, a new era is upon us. One where we can no longer play the games of the past, where total transparency, honor, and trust will be the norm for those who want to live and lead extraordinary lives. Now it goes on. Hey, I'm in for the extraordinary life piece. And I read through this, and I know we're going to cover some of the book. Let's go back into this of what this is about and why you felt called to write this book. And we'll start to dissect it because there's some cool stuff I think will be very applicable to everybody listening.
Awesome. Yeah, let's dive in. Well, Drop the Armor it's a love story. I'm just going to say that. It is a love story right out the gate. I'm speaking to your heart. I want to pierce your heart. I want to pierce the heart with this book. This is not another heady, logical, cerebral book, which there's a lot of that stuff out there. And there's a need for that stuff. Sometimes we just want strategy. We want tactic. We just want the plan. But I think that this message is really for those warriors. I call you warriors at heart because you have been fighting battles your whole life. You have been slaying in business. You've been slaying in athletics and sports. Like you are crushing. You know how to crush. You know how to push. You know how to overcome. And the thing is, I know that a lot of us, that's all we've been trained to do is one more fight, one more battle, one more thing to conquer. And what I have found is that we get to this point or this crossroads in life that all this conquering and all this achieving and all this accumulating, we sit there, and this is literally what I hear from people who come to me, and it was my story, is on the outside, it looks like I have it all. I'm more successful than ever on paper or by the outside means. You look at my body, you look at my life, but on the inside, there is an internal civil war. I am more unfulfilled than ever. And what is going on? And this inability to be able to bridge the gap between what you long for and what you desire and what you know you're created for versus what you're actually experiencing, not at a material level, but at a soul level inside, right? So the book was really written for all of those ultra high achievers who've been chasing and fighting battles their whole life that are at a crossroads and saying, man, something has got to give. I am not fulfilled. I do not feel free. I feel like a slave, truly, to the business, to the things that I've built. And I'm really craving to know, like, what is it like? What is it like to actually have peace and freedom and fulfillment?
I love it. And this is men and women. I just want to put that out because, oftentimes you're like, oh, this is just for men. Or if you hear the term warrior, they're like, well, hold on, that's not me. And I love, you've got this kind of, I'll call it alter ego, but this name that I don't know if you gave it or who gave it to you, but the Queen of Hearts.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is so you when I think about your personality and I start reading through the book and I'm like, how you are able to pierce people's hearts. You are able to see them. And in a world where people want to be seen, they want to be heard. And in a way, just go, okay, I'm not that different, but I am different and called to do these things. Help me understand this as these people are reading through this and you're talking about this love story and you're piercing through their hearts. Why do you think most people live in that space for so long in the struggle, right? That just this dichotomy of like success over here, and then they know over here in other parts of their life, whether it's relationships, health, or and they know they're not winning on the same level.
Yeah.
Why do they stay there?
Well, a huge piece of my the message in here is really that we are products of the world. Chapter 4 is called The Shift of Allegiance, and it is about when we worship things of the world, when we chase the things of the world, we chase worldly success or what the world has taught us ever since we were young. I mean, somebody showed you what success looks like. They talked about it in the home. Either we don't have money, we have money. Those people have that. You want to be like those people. You don't want to be like these people. So we all have that framework. We have that idea of what success looks like, and we're products of our environment. We're products of what we've been immersed in and the programming. I mean, we've all been indoctrinated. We've all been programmed, right? And this is not new. And the question was the program the right one that gave us true fulfillment, not just mentally or superficially, but mentally, physically, right? The physical manifestation of the things around us, emotionally and spiritually. And I think a lot of us are straddling these two worlds where it's like, I'm doing all these things that the physical world has taught me, all the mindset stuff. I'm all up in my head. I'm chasing things, but I've really been disconnected, if I'm honest, from my heart and from the spirit. And it was interesting, Brian, that I come from a background of high performance athletics. I don't know if you know this, but I used to own a holistic health and performance studio in Canada. I was competing at a high level and I was working with a lot of executives and really driven people. And I was doing all like high performance coaching, mindset. It was all that stuff, right? Like protocols and disciplines and mindset. That's why I say warriors is not just for men and women. It's for anyone who has just been in that mode. And what I noticed was that secretly, behind the scenes, when they weren't out in front of all their buddies or all the place or on the floor, throwing weights around or on whatever it was, they were craving relationships. Again, they were craving connection. They were feeling isolated and alone and really disconnected. And so it evolved that they just wanted support. They just felt like, I feel like a machine. I would hear that all the time. I just feel like a machine. And that term gets tossed around like, be a machine, like that's awesome. It's cool until it's not. Until you feel like you're a production factory and you always have to be producing in order to feel validated, in order to be wanted by your spouse, in order to be approved of by your peers. Like if you ain't producing, you're dying. And there's some truth to that, but it's also a detrimental lie. There's another side of that, right? That's also not quite the full truth. And so to answer your question, I think that we have been so indoctrinated in the ways of the world, and that has disconnected us from really the ways of the heart, which are the gateway to the soul and the spirit, and we're disconnected from the spirit. And so we're leading a fragmented life. It's like we're living a half-life.
Yeah, we've seen it and I can relate. And I want to come back to the high performance coaching because I'm glad you brought that up. I know your background and a lot of our athletes and people that are coaches that listen to the show, I know we're going to want to dive into that. But you mentioned something that I hear often from people, and I don't want them to miss this, as you talked about people letting the world define what success looked like.
Yeah.
How do you define success? And people that are listening out there, maybe struggling with that today, going, yeah, like I relate. Like I was told I had to make X amount of money. I had to have this. I had to produce that, right? Like I had to be this to be successful. How do you work through that and help people? And is there a definition you've really leaned into for what is success for you?
Well, success for me today is really depth and richness of life, of moments, of experiences, of relationships. It's like having rich, meaningful experiences that you actually remember also, right? So for me, it's that, I think of Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, to give you a hope and a future. And the word prosper means that not that just that you'll have financial prosperity, but that it will be well with your soul. As you go, your journey will be well. So it's not like, while I'm building this business, while I'm building this thing, yes, we need to do hard things. Yes, we need to overcome challenges, but we have this idea in this program that's like everything has to be really, really hard and, always a rush and always a chase. And I think so many of us are really poor. We're time poor. We're relationally poor. We're spiritually poor. We're mentally poor. We have terrible thoughts occupying the territory of our minds, right? Maybe we have some health, but when we look at it, we may have some physical riches, some financial wealth. But the question is, do you have integrated wealth in all areas of your life? And so that's what success is to me, is when I can really look at the relationships I have with my husband, with my children, the memories we have. Like, was I there? Do I even remember the trip that we were on? And I think that that's really the contrast between the world's success versus what I believe God created us for, and which is, when we're operating according to the principles, the eternal principles that he laid out to us, which was really what the Bible is. It's a playbook for life. It's the ultimate success principle book. It's just principles, and principles are eternal. Strategies and tactics, they move, right? They're here today, gone tomorrow. Principles are forever. And so when we are founded on those eternal principles, we experience a different depth and a richness of life, more connection, more meaning. When we play at the superficial surface level, which I think is what happens when we're in this an addiction to racing against time, always having to operate from a fire under our butt, to either get away from something or run towards something that seems to be escaping us, is that we're skimming. We're kind of just like skimming the surface of our marriage. We're just skimming the surface of our kids. We live with them. We don't even really know them though.
Hey guys, it's Brian here. I hope you are enjoying the show. By the way, if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur looking to grow your personal brand, make a bigger impact, maybe increase your leads and grow your revenue, let's help you get started today by connecting up with my friends over at the Brand Builders Group. You've heard me talk about them, but if you're new here, this is definitely the first step to get you started in turning your reputation into revenue. Head over to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey. Again, to set up your free brand call, go to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey to set up a free strategy call with one of the team at Brand Builders, and they will dive into your specific goals for how you want to grow your personal brand. I can't wait to hear how it goes. We can see the families that are on those trips, and you got people distracted. And look, I've been that one where attached to my phone, or people will joke and they'll have their laptop out, like working remotely, and it's like,
yeah,
how many times do we miss these opportunities? And you've been able to work with some of the highest performers. You still do that as an executive coach and a holistic coach and everything you do. What are some characteristics of the people that truly do perform in all of those areas that you see as maybe a through line or something people are listening going, yeah, I'm doing well in this area, I'm doing well in that area, but the stuff you're talking about, Christine, like I want all of that. And you've worked with some of those people. What do they start to discover, and what separates them into truly being a high performer in those integrated areas of their life that matter?
Yeah, I'm going to call it the kingdom, right? The kingdom performer, which is, that we're operating, because whether you believe in God or you believe in the Bible or not, there's just principles are principles. There's universal laws that are written into the fabric of creation, and you can't deny it, And so I just wanted to say that. So what I've seen is the people that really experience the greatest results, that are truly able to step in and say, yeah, you know what? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to live the life that God has for me, the thing I'm created for. I'm not going to be serving man or being afraid of what everyone thinks of me. And, I'm here to please one. First of all, there's a couple things. Number one is deciding. I think that the main reason why so many of us are struggling, and we're living a double life. I think that, Brian, I'm sure people like that. And I'm going to raise my hand because I was one of them. On the outside, it looked great, but I was living a double life. I was living a double life in it was because I was in indecision. I did not fully decide, like, this is the life that I'm created for. This is the life I'm going to live, and it's going to be this. It's no longer like this, and I'm going to compromise my values to get my need met for a moment because I need this gratification. But I think really being in decision, that, because the word decide means to cut off all other options. We're not selecting anymore. We're not choosing. We're deciding. It gets to be this effective immediately. I think my next book is going to be called Effective Immediately, the power of making great decisions. But decisiveness, and then the ability to execute even when you're uncomfortable. Even when you're uncomfortable, to do the right thing, even when your voice shakes, to do the right thing, even when people are going to say things about you, even when you're going to let people down. The ability to execute in the space of viscerally being uncomfortable. And the third one is, this is the most important one, is getting to the matters of the heart. I think that I know that the ones who truly step in and lead the extraordinary life, that's why I always, one of my prayers, Brian, is, Lord, give me the heart of David. David was a warrior. He was a king. He was a fighter, but he had a heart for God, like to be in intimacy with him. He had a heart for the people. And I think that we just get crushed because the matters of our heart they're not right. We're not right in our heart with ourselves. We're not right with our spouse. We're not right with God. So I see that there are men and women that have a heart. They've gone out of their head. They're not just all up here anymore, but they have traveled the 18-inch journey from their head to the heart, which they say is the hardest journey you're ever going to take. And now they are connected, right? And the heart is what allows us to connect to ourselves, our inner man, our inner woman, to God, the creator of all things, to the spirit, to true inspiration, true wisdom. So I just want to say that, often my prayer is, God, give me the heart of David and the wisdom of Solomon. I want to be a queen that is wise, that I have wisdom, and then the courage to execute, when it's time to go. The courage of Daniel.
Matters.
I love
those three. If everybody taking notes, too. I mean, those are so powerful, and yet they're so simple when you really start to break them down. I'm thinking as you're sharing each of those, but you need all three, right? And oftentimes I think we make a decision, then we don't follow it up. And you said, when it gets uncomfortable, and I've often found, and you probably know this coaching people, and even in your own journey, when it gets uncomfortable, that's just you moving through into these new patterns and new beliefs and things. You're going, I haven't done it yet this way. I haven't done that yet. And then when you speak about the heart, anytime I've really been passionate about something, right? I think about that is like when your heart gets attached to it, you're unstoppable, right? Like when you get this, like there's a new world. Yeah. And it was one of the chapters. I'd love for you to talk about this because it's funny. I thought about this, and I remember Nicole and I were on this walk, right? And we're talking about the weapons and different things there. And chapter 11 was upgrade your weapons. And people are probably like, weapons? What weapons do I have? And so I'd love to talk about that one because we actually had a conversation. So I want to get your take and kind of know what that is what weapons, and then how do people upgrade them so they can play this bigger life in a kingdom calling?
Come on, now you're talking my language. I love talking about upgraded battle strategies. A huge piece of the book, you guys, I just want to share that the book is really divided into 3 parts. The first part is releasing the past. It's like dropping the baggage. Everybody wants to step into the promise. Like, bless my business. I want the awesome growth. But you're still carrying all the baggage of your past, your old identities, old operating systems, old relationships that just need to go. Like, you're just weighed down. So that's the first section. The second section is really igniting your faith. And again, it's not having a head relationship, but it's having a heart relationship with the one who created you. A lot of people know about God, but a lot of people don't know who God really is and how to have conversation with him, right? And so that's the second one, is really cultivating that intimacy with the Spirit. But then the third section is exactly that, stepping in to the extraordinary life. What do you do that? It's new levels of warfare. It really is. It's like, what are the tools? Every day we're fighting battles. The promise is not that you're not going to have battles to fight. You're always going to be fighting battles. But you know that so much of the time we're getting baited. The enemy loves to distract us. Distraction is one of the greatest ways to get you off purpose, right? Off your game. Like, let's just throw that thing at you. Let's distract you. Let's derail you. Let's disconnect you from your spouse. So now you don't have the bandwidth. Let's just get you disoriented and confused about the truth. Let's add a little division in your business. There's a whole bunch of D's in the book that I talk about. But then, so the question is like, okay, am I going to get baited and just jump in and fight the wrong battles? And now I go home exhausted. I'm off purpose. I'm off course. Now I'm fighting at home and I'm the enemy too. Like, right? Or am I going to be aware of recognizing what the true battle is for and upgrading my arsenal? So upgrading your ability to recognize what the battles are for in your life. And so that you know when to enter and when it ain't your battle to fight. Right? That's number one. But when we think about upgraded battle strategies, now I have two sections. I talk about the ones that are in our hands that are every day that we don't think about. And then I talk about spiritual ones. So the spiritual ones is like prayer, the word of God, worship. There's a whole bunch of spiritual, because we live in a spiritual world. Okay. The physical manifestation is what we see, but it's way beyond that. But I want to talk about just some simple things that we don't even think about. The power of the word. There's so much around positive language and this. But the word of God is so clear that out of the mouth comes life or death, blessings or curses, right? And so we get to be so careful. And I think this is about really being ruthless and deciding to cut off the language that destroys our household, that destroys our people. And it's just like we paper cut our marriages, it's death by a little 1,000 paper cuts, right? We're speaking death over our situations, our business. There's a whole bunch of people right now, based on when this podcast come out, economy and the world is harder than ever and things are harder. But we also know that there's two sides to every coin. And it's also in these times that the most money's ever made and the most opportunities show up. And it's really understanding how am I using the power of my word to multiply life, to build the people up around me. Words are part of it. I want to also say touch. I'm going to use this touch because I'm talking about very basic things that we have. Hands, Jesus healed so many people through the laying of hands, but we also, breaks my heart the amount of people that I work with and coach that never heard the words "I love you." They never heard that from their father, usually from the father. It's well, Brian, I bet you it's 90%. It's a lot. I bet it's at least 80%. Like I never really heard my dad say that. I've had so many clients say to me, my dad never gave me a hug. Right? So when I talk about when we're going through marriage issues and relational issues, I realize like so much of the pain that we store is because there has been a withholding of language over us, words of life being spoken into us and into our children and into our marriage, a withholding of hands. Sometimes there's physical abuse with our hands, but I do a lot of work with couples, and it's a lot of couples that want intimacy, but they withhold from each other, sex, affection, touch. And sometimes, you might be having a really, really bad day. Maybe Nicole, all she needs to do in that moment is just put her hand on your shoulder, and like, she doesn't need to say anything, but there's so much power in our hands, not only the laying of hands to pray, but really, the power of touch. And it's so simple. Think about your kids, and it's all these subtle things. Obviously, I talk about spiritual sight, how to activate spiritual eyes, spiritual ears, activate spiritual language, heavenly language. There's a whole bunch of tools in that, and it's a great toolbox. But I do believe we need to have a powerful arsenal of things that we rely on that are not just cerebral tools, but that we're very aware of how we're responding, not reacting. I also want to mention this one because time is a big one that comes up a lot. A lot of people I work with, and I'm sure in your world, we're running out of time. We're always racing against time. We have this relationship with time that we're always rushing. We're always running to the next thing. That's why we got to work while we're on vacation with our kids, and we're trying to multitask while we're driving. We're doing, we're listening to a podcast and we're working out and we're doing sales calls and it's just like, what? But I want to say this, that there is a art of timing in warfare. If you study war, there is an art of timing and pacing, the pace that you move throughout the day, the pace that you listen, the pace that you speak, the pace that you respond to. And so many of us are getting eaten alive at work, in our marriages, because we are rushing. We have a familiar pace. So one of the things I talk about in the book is really recognizing and interrupting your pace and your pattern, but using the art of time and timing as a supernatural strategy.
Oh, man, I love, what's interesting is literally, Christine, that's the number one thing our sales team at Revolution, we do this monthly training and they come back and it has just been an overwhelming response of we need help, and call it time management, call it, whatever you want to call it within there. And it was the number one thing that continues to come up. And as you shared that, I got to ask, because we got you on here, is what have you seen as far as people being able to break that pattern in their relationship with time? Because I think you hit on something that what I learned is it was my relationship and like up here belief about time that I don't have enough of it. And, there's just never, enough for this or that. And I'm always in battle with time.
Yeah.
It was until I created this almost love of time. And I go, I have enough. I have so much time. And then I created systems and structures and things that I've shared often, but I would love your take on that, because I think people, it could be upwards similar to the other stat you gave on touch and love and all that stuff. I got to say it's probably 80-90% of people struggle.
It's a big one. Yeah. And you said it, like, I believe all our problems are relationship problems. At the end of the day, every single problem in your life is a relationship problem. And if you have a problem with time, it's your relationship with time. So, if you have a problem with money, it's your relationship with money. It's like, if you have a problem with women, it's your relationship with women. I mean, it's a relationship issue at the core. So I love what you said. My kids have this momisms or Christineisms, because they always hear me say, we have all the time we need for everything that matters. I have all the time I need for everything that matters. And it's been on repeat, right? And I just even think, I know that, again, managing time is an earthly concept, because time just is. You don't manage, it is. But here's the thing I talk about in the book, and this is a great reframe and a huge thing that helps my clients and really changed for me. First of all, I got to the point where I was so sick and tired of operating from pressure and rushing that I made a decision. I cut in the sand and I said, effective immediately, I refuse to operate from pressure. I refuse to be rushed. Like, I don't want to experience my life like that anymore. And that came after decades of being in perpetual go mode. I mean, the name of my old business was called Push. Okay. Like, second place is first loser. If you're not driving, you're dying. Like, it was just ridiculous. I always had to be moving. And so that's a side note. What I talk about on the book that is interesting is that, I talk about the two types of time. Number one is chronos, chronological time. I don't know if you're familiar, but chronological time is derived from the Greek god Kronos, who was the god of destruction. So it's very interesting that our world system of time is built around this chronos, limited, clock that was invented, right? Just to give people, whatever, we can talk about that. That's a whole other conversation. Yeah. But then, so there's that system. That was a system, and it was created by man. And it's interesting. I'm always fascinated to go to the root of where did this come from? Then there is Kairos time, which is heavenly time, or God's time, which is about timing, order, seasons, appointments, being in the right place at the right time, in the right state of mind, and boom, it's like a door opens. We've all had those moments where it's like, man, right place, right time. I wasn't even planning it. I wasn't thinking about it, but it's like a door open. And I've had so many of those. That's how I met Mark. That's how my multiple businesses started. And I would challenge those of you listening to make a list of the last 10 things in your life that were truly, truly, truly life-giving, expansive, epic, amazing. And I want to ask you, did you make that happen by forcing it into a timeline? Or did it just sort of show up unexpected, unplanned, at the right time? Maybe it was the time that you were ripe, you were ready. But there was a right timing, there was a right order, and there was a right positioning. So what I talk about in the book is really deciding. Yes, we live in the world and we have this 12-hour clock, which is the tool, which we learn how to, play with that. We use the tool, we don't let it use us. But will I be ruled by Chronos or Kairos? Am I going to align myself to heavenly time and be really tuning in? Is this the right time for this project? Right? It might be the right thing, but not the right time. And if I can trust heavenly time, God's timing, which overrides earthly time, then, I can have peace in the waiting.
Yes. And it is that relationship. And I love that, going back to the root of the words. And, one of my mentors and coaches, we did a call yesterday, and he's always sharing some of those words and the Latin kind of, origin of it. I'm like, interesting how that is played out to today. And you just start to learn this. And I always say that's the journey. It's like, once you learn these things, you can't unsee it or unlearn it. You go, now we got a decision to make, right? We're back to this again of like, which one am I going to choose? And I love that you share that, because for a lot of people, I do think when they start to understand this and they equip themselves and they make these decisions, they're going down this path that is new, and it could be uncomfortable because, like you said earlier, it's like the world is going this way, and they would love for you to think and believe everything is chaotic and the negative, and why everything around us, negative still sells in the news and media and everywhere there. And it keeps our attention. But man, to be the chain breakers and the people that actually go out and do that. I love what you're doing. I want to plug your podcast as well, because I think this could be another great resource for people. And you got Breaking Chains. That's what made me think of it, is like, man, we got chains, and some of us are the chain breakers in our family, or we're looking to figure that out. So tell people about the podcast so they have a little bit of insight, and like, who's it for? What do the discussions usually look like?
Well, I think you just nailed it. I'm about freedom. I am tired of being a slave. I'm tired of seeing people enslaved to systems that are outdated, old ways of doing business, old ways of doing relationships, being addicted to chaos, to drama, to trauma, addicted to the world's clock or whatever it is. I love to help people break free from the things that are keeping them in bondage. My father worked for the CIA. He was an alcoholic. He was a very high driving, high achieving man, but he got the death grips of addiction that got a hold of him. And so I watched as his daughter, him just, really become a casualty of the whole system, right? From all of it, military system, pharmaceutical system, drugs, all of it. And I was like, man, so, in one sense, I'm speaking to my dad, I'm on a mission, but I'm also that person in my family that is breaking the chains of addiction, of bondage, of abandonment. And so for me, breaking chains is about breaking free of the chains that bind us so that we can really step into the life of freedom and fulfillment and faith that we were created for anyways. We were not created to be enslaved. We're created to be servants, right? Serving a king. We're created to be servant leaders, but not to be slaves to a system. And I just see so many of us living a lie. And I was doing it, on the outside, it looks good, but I couldn't take the gas off my business. I couldn't walk away from whatever it was because it had a hold of me. I use this analogy in the book that like, we think we're large and in charge, but it's like having a big dog on a leash. And it's like, you got this Rottweiler on a leash. You think you're in charge of it, but the minute you let go of the leash, like, is that dog going to sit there? Are you the master or is he the master?
Yes.
And so the podcast is really about us reclaiming authority over our mind, our business, our marriage, our relationships, our heart, so that we can align ourselves to the mission and the kind that we're here for, and not continue to get distracted and baited by all this stuff. I want to say this too. So Breaking Chains, I do interviews on that. I'm passionate about connecting with leaders who are zigging when everyone else is zagging, that are operating by the narrow gate. That means you're not doing it like the rest of the world.
Yes.
We're not designed, Brian. I know you're one of those people. People look at you and they go, what are you doing? You're doing like, why is your life like this? What are you doing? Tell me. And that is a great opportunity for us to share our stories and to share our faith or whatever. But that's where freedom is. So
that's right.
Interviews, solo cast, I just riff. Sometimes I'll just have a great morning session. I'm like, I'm just going to riff on some concepts like Chronos and Kairos and challenge your relationship with time. But you guys can check it out. Breaking Chains podcast, iTunes, Spotify, all things. Yeah.
We'll include the link to your website because you have everything there. Guys, if you're looking for a speaker, I know you've got some courses listed there. You do executive coaching. So some of our listeners are looking, going, hey, that's what I need, right? Like, I don't need this other coaching in my life right now. This is what I need to move forward. And then we'll include the podcast and everything. So I want people to connect with you, understand that there is someone out there that can help and guide them, because oftentimes I know, being one of those people, you feel alone and out there and you're like, man, I'm just weird. I'm different. And then you connect up and realize you are not that different.
Yeah.
There is this group of kingdom-based entrepreneurs that really do want to make a collective impact. And you start connecting and you go, man, this is it. And it rises up. So I knew this would be awesome. We're going to have you back on. And when you and Mark are back in town, we're going to have to bring you back into the official in-person.
Yes.
This has been awesome. I always love to ask this at the end. Is there anything we haven't covered or on your heart that you want to share with everybody before we wrap?
I'm just going to end where we started. You started by reading the New Era is Upon Us letter. And Brian, that letter came through for me at the beginning of 2020. I think now there's a lot of people online talking about the new era, and it's true, but I believe in every fiber and cell of my being that we are in a split of humanity right now. You could see what's going on culturally in the world. The pandemic was just a little, experiment there to see the beginning of it. And I do know that the people listening also know, like, you can't deny it anymore. There is a great split, a great divide. Some people are waking up. They're starting to realize the old ways that we used to do things, the old ways of running businesses, building businesses, running teams, it does not work. I'm watching massive organizations starting to, fall apart, restructure, rebuild. And so I think that we're just in this time of a grand restructuring. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So I believe that we're just in this call right now, that there is a grand restructuring going on. And I believe that God is searching to see who are the warriors, who are the men and women that will be the leaders of this new era, this new way of doing life, business, systems, infrastructure, education, finance, like all of it. He's looking, and if you're straddling two worlds and you got 1 foot in and 1 foot out, it's like a marriage. You got to go all in. You got to decide, are you in? Let's decide. If you decide you want a better life, if you decide you want the life that God has for you, if you decide you want freedom and fulfillment, then you got to just stop doing the splits and get all in.
Amen. Well, you rock. I knew this would be awesome. The new era is upon us. I love that you talk about that restructuring, because I think we all sense it and we all need to find where we fit into that. And we are called to lead, and God has equipped us, I believe, with the tools. And then now you've got even more tools today. So make sure you connect up with Christine and leave us a review. Any of the things that you leave on there, we do read them. DM me. A lot of times you'll want follow up. You're like, hey, how do I learn more? Hit us up. We're real people. We love to help you. We love to serve. And hopefully you've heard that today, because this is all about how do we equip more kingdom-based entrepreneurs to go out in the world and serve. So thank you guys for tuning in as always. And if we can do anything for you, just let us know. We'll catch you on the next episode. See ya.